I got the Bluetooth ones, you name it.
I love it. So
Yeah,
Stanley, again, welcome to FaceTime with Todd Wharton. It's an honor to have you here, man.
that's great.
Um, you've done thousands of interviews,
Thousands, literally. Yeah,
thousands of
either
interviews.
TV, radio, streaming, Zoom.
Exactly,
Yeah, all this stuff now.
exactly.
It's where
Which
the
is
world's going.
pretty crazy. You've had over a 50-year run in entertainment, and first of all, I gotta definitely congratulate you for that because that is a hurdle that most people dream about, even dream about being in the industry for just 10 years, if that.
Yeah, yeah.
And but you expanded your horizons. Like we just saw a clip, like I said, of My Three Sons. We saw some great people in there, like I was saying, Fred McMurray, who was Stephen Douglas, and then we had William Farley, who played the gentleman right there. And but he's from I Love Lucy, and I was speaking to you about how is it to work with a gentleman like that because he's been in some iconic shows, just like My Three Sons.
Well, for me, it was a dream come true because, like I said, I knew him from I Love Lucy. My brother Barry and I would play hooky quite a lot so we could watch I Love Lucy. And then miraculously at 9:30 when the show was over, we'd have a recovery.
Yeah,
And anyway, when I found out he was going to be on the show and be my grandfather, I was just ecstatic. I never knew either of my real grandfathers. So I set out to make him my grandfather. And for whatever reason, he obliged. I don't think he was really somebody that cared about kids or pets. He was kind of cut from that W.C. Fields cloth.
hmm
But he warmed up to me and we were like best friends for the entire time he was on the show, about 4 years. Ate lunch with him every day. We used to go to Nicodel's restaurant
wow.
on, across the street from Paramount. And he'd hold court there every lunch hour. And he would get a little bit inebriated for lunch. He would have what I call the liquid lunch.
Wow.
And he didn't want to go back to work. Our lunch hour was from 12 to 1. And usually at 1 o'clock, he didn't want to leave. And he would listen to me, though. I'd go, okay, Uncle Bill, let's go. We got to go back to work. And go, all right, kid. And he'd get up and go. So when the studio found out about that, they came to me and said, listen, at 1:45, no matter what you're doing, you got to get him up and moving back towards the studio. So that became my unofficial job with Bill, was to sort of escort him back to the show so he would get there on time after lunch.
Right. Were you trained as a kid on acting, or was it something that was kind of like thrown at you when you were a kid? Because a lot of child stars back then, a lot of them didn't have experience. They had a look, and somebody
Yeah.
just literally put them on a show. But you had a lot of lines, so I have to assume you had some training.
No, not really, not in the
Wow.
beginning. You know what it is? I had really good directors. And, when you're working with kids, and I think even adults, as a director, if you're just standing there doing your lines, somehow it's awkward. But if you're doing something, like working on something or typing while you're talking to somebody or, filing papers, somehow it becomes real. And just splitting that focus a little bit, unless it really doesn't work for the scene, I think
Yeah.
keeps people very, very real, very natural. And my first work really was as an extra. There was an agent there at a swim school where I learned how to swim very young in
hmm
Hollywood. And she kept coming up to my mom saying, let me send him out. I think he's got, the right criteria to be an actor. He's cute. He's, outgoing. And so my mom relented, and I went on a few shows where I got hired, but I didn't have any lines. And eventually I did an Ozzie and Harriet episode where I was just one of 10 kids that was hired. And for whatever reason, yeah, Ozzy was kind of keeping an eye on me, and I was pretty rambunctious. And he came up to me, but we shot it a couple times, but he came up and he said, could you say this line? And he told me what to say. And we shot it again, and I said the line and then, walked off screen like I was supposed to do. And then they shot it again. I noticed he moved the camera nice and tight on my face, and I said the same line. And that was that. Anyway, at the end of the day, he came up to my mom and he said, could you leave your name and number with my secretary in the office? I want to have Stanley come back again. We'd
hmm
like to use him again. And, you hear that all the time, especially as an adult, and you never see anybody twice. But true to his word, he called back. And from about end of 56, I think it was, the beginning of 57, when I did that episode, I probably did 4 or 5 episodes a year for the Nelsons as a neighborhood kid. that first line that he gave me to say, I was actually able to join the Screen Actors Guild because I had worked as an actor, not an extra, and that's what got me started.
Wow.
Later, as I started to get more and more parts, there was a lady that my agent turned my mom on to. She was a lady named Lois Auer that kind of coached kids. I got sent to her, but she really was the person that taught me my lines. We'd sit there and, I fortunately had a great memory. After doing a scene 2 or 3 times, I could just do it. Even if it was like a 5-page scene, I somehow, just doing the lines a couple times, I could just, do them back. And so she sort of became a coach, I guess you could say, in the early years of my 3 sons. When we were doing full weeks worth of work, I would go there on a Saturday and I would have the weekly schedule and I would learn all my scenes with her on a Saturday.
Wow.
And then as the week would go by, I just do my scenes. And then a lot of time, because we finished early, they'd go, here's a 5-page scene. Learn this because we're going to shoot it in about 5 minutes. So that happened quite a bit. So I learned how to do things on the fly or to improv. They'd say, if you could just say something like that, that's okay. You don't have to do the exact words. So
Right.
it wasn't Shakespeare, so nobody really gave a hoot.
And what's good is when kids make mistakes, it's actually really funny because when adults make mistakes, you could see they show the frustration when they know they messed up. I mean, today when people make mistakes, they realize outtakes are awesome to use. But back then, obviously, there was a little more seriousness. But when a kid makes a mistake, it's pretty funny because a lot of times their mistake is just natural because kids make mistakes all the time. So, and if you have a good director, they'll be like, no, you know what? Let's run with that because that was funny.
It's funny and it's real. But, forget kids, even with adult actors sometimes, because when I'm working, if we're shooting something and I'll just tell the people, look, I don't care what happens. If something goes wrong, just keep going. Don't worry about it. If you made a mistake or if something didn't come out, or even if you're frustrated with it in the scene, just keep dealing with it like you would in real life. I mean, a good illustration of that is if you remember the movie American Graffiti. And when Toad comes in the beginning to the drive-in and he pulls in, and Charlie Martin Smith didn't know how to drive a motor scooter, and he let the clutch out again, and the thing took off and crashed into, I think, the Coke machine. And so Charlie was all upset and, went back to George Lucas and said, oh, Dad, can we do it again? I'm really sorry. He goes, no, print. I wanted that. I said, I couldn't have got that. I wouldn't even have thought of that, but that was great. And you stayed in character and dealt with it. And there was a couple of other instances in that same movie where people actually made a mistake or something that they rehearsed that was supposed to happen didn't, but they went with the one, where it was a mistake because it was real. So you, as a director, you want that kind of stuff. You don't want your actors getting all frustrated and going, oh, let me do that again, because that's probably the best take.
Of course. Now, having a show like that, how amazing it is, you guys have a plethora of guests that come on, because when you have a hit show, stars love to come on those shows just to do one part, whether they have a movie coming out, so they want to keep themselves relevant in this. Who are some of your memorable co-stars that did a couple of shows with you during My 3 Sons? Because I believe one of them was Jimmy Stewart, correct?
Yeah, Jimmy Stewart was on the show. There was a lot of old-time actors. We had 2 kinds of actors that came on the show. The ones who were just launching their careers, and this might have been their first job being on My 3 Sons. So, they were completely terrorized working on a set, with Fred McMurray and all that. But it was, their first shot. The other kind of actors we had were people that had big careers, somebody like Lou Ayres or Sylvia Sidney, that were huge movie stars in their day. And, they wanted to continue to work. And My 3 Sons, I don't know how we got a hold of these people or their agent. We're still trying to find them work. And they would come work on the show. Some of the early actors were like Martin Sheen, Beau Bridges, Sally Kellerman. I've seen him. I'm sure it's him. It's Harrison Ford, although I could not find a credit for him. So he must have been, if I remember right, he's just an extra.
Harrison Ford, I was about to say, because Harrison Ford, I believe, he did a lot of extra work. But I believe Harrison Ford, people don't know the story. Harrison Ford's breakout role was actually Star Wars. He
Yeah.
was, I believe he was doing construction on the set. I believe he was doing
Well,
construction as
that's how
well.
he got American Graffiti. He was working on
Yeah,
George's house, and they were rehearsing other people. And
exactly.
George actually asked him. He says, "Could you come in and read? You know, I know you're an actor, and if you could just do me a favor and read with these actors." So, in a lot, if you ever go on like YouTube or something, look at the auditions, you'll hear him reading lines off screen. You don't ever see him.
Right.
And they were still looking for that one character, and I guess George decided to reward him with it. But you know what? The same thing happened to him again with Star Wars. There were other people, like, you know, like William Catt. There was a ton of actors that were supposed to be Han Solo, and again, George brought him in. It was kind of demeaning in a way since he was starting to get work by then, but you know, he
Hmm.
wasn't a big star. Mark, on the other hand, Hamill had done a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
we competed a lot before that. But yeah, you know, he was gracious, came in and did the lines with people off stage. You can hear him, you know, next to the camera throwing the lines to the actor. And they were having trouble making up their mind. And I forgot who he finally talked to. George Lucas said, "Look, I'm really having a problem. I got to see some more people." And somebody said, "Well, what about him? This guy right here, he's the guy reading the lines. He's perfect for that part. He has such a great demeanor and his sarcasm and all that." And I guess
Yeah.
he looked at it a little closer, and that's how Harrison Ford got that part. But
Yeah.
you know, in working with actors, that's why you always tell actors, just do whatever. Don't have an ego about it. Go in there, because whatever you think is going to happen probably isn't anyway. But the fact that you're there, other things can happen.
Oh,
An
yeah.
illustration of that is my brother Barry. You know, if you're an actor that out of our era, people tell you, don't do commercials. Whatever you do, don't do commercials. They're bad for you. They'll typecast you. They're kind of demeaning, and they'll keep you from getting other work.
I didn't
Well,
know that. I didn't
yeah.
know that.
Well,
Yeah.
it's not quite the same anymore because some of these stories have gotten out. But
Well,
the
because
one
some
from
of these
Barry,
commercials, like the guy from, I think it's Allstate, the guy that does the Allstate commercials, the young
oh
African
yeah,
American kid.
that guy won an Oscar a couple years
Yeah.
ago. You
Well,
know,
that's the crazy thing is now I understand what you said back then. It definitely doesn't get you typecast, right? But you know what it is today? People don't mind commercials because now if you can land a commercial and become the it person for that brand,
yeah,
you can
you're a
make
spokesperson.
millions.
Yeah, yeah, those are
Crazy
few
amount of
and far
money.
between, and sometimes
It's
that happens. Like
crazy.
Joe played Flo, you know, Flo
Oh
on
my
Progressive
God, yeah.
Insurance. Yeah,
But
but
then
it
you're right.
kind of
I
hurt
can't
her
see.
acting career for a while.
I was about to say, you know what? I really can't even picture Flo because every time if I see her in anything, I'm gonna just say, "Isn't that the that
Yeah,
lady from the insurance?"
well, that happened a lot to actors early on, and it was more the casting directors that didn't want to cast you after you'd been seen in a big national commercial. They had a problem with it, just like they did with actors of my ilk who were, you know, coming off a supremely successful TV show. You know, you come in and they go, "Well, we can't hire you because it's a part of a guy who just murdered somebody, and we don't want the audience to be going, oh, look, Chip just killed somebody," or whatever. You know, I think the casting directors are over that. Oh, but I was going to tell you the story of Barry doing one of these commercials a few years ago. He got
Yeah.
called on, I think it was a Heineken commercial. He went in and he auditioned. He got a call back, auditioned again, third time audition, found out he got it. He got a script, and it was shooting, I think, the next day. And Barry got to the set, and he's sitting there in makeup. And I guess it was the assistant director came up to him and he said, "Barry, did they give you the script yet?" And Barry goes, "Well, yeah, no, they sent it last night. I'm good to go." He goes, "Oh, well, that wasn't the real script." He goes, "Here's the script." And Barry's like, "What?" So he's like looking at it. And he says, "Oh, and have you met David yet?" And Barry's like, "David? No. Who's David?" He goes, "The director." So he says, "Well, just come with me." So he takes him out, brings him over to this table where David was. Turns out the director of the commercial is David Fincher.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so there's David Fincher, and so they sit there yapping, and then finally the assistant director says, "And have you met Brad?" And Barry's like, "No, I haven't met anybody except for David." He goes, "Well, come on with me." So they went over and knocked on a door. Door opens, and Barry followed the assistant director and he said, "Barry, this is Brad Pitt." And Barry's like, nice to meet you. Turned
Yeah.
out it was a Super Bowl commercial they were shooting, top secret. David Fincher was directing it, who had worked with Brad Pitt, and Brad Pitt was the star of it. And Barry was the only other character in there with lines. So, and it got aired once during the Super Bowl, and aired, I think, in Europe and Japan.
Hmm.
And but because of this relationship, where he got to spend the day on the set with David Fincher. About, I guess it was probably 6 months later, he had a script sent to his door called The Zodiac, and there was
Oh,
name
wow.
written on it,
Yeah.
circled. And then about 2 years later, he had the same thing. He got a script. He didn't even go out for anything, and a script. It's a part of Mr. Cox for a movie called The Social Network.
That's right. Let me
So I
tell you
always tell
something. He got
actors,
some big movies there, big
yeah,
actors.
the point is, you go on the commercials, you don't know who's going to be directing them. I mean, commercials used to be directed by guys like Sidney Pollack. I mean, just big name directors, and it wasn't widely known that they did that. But it's an
Yeah, today
opportunity
it's a
to
little
show your
different.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a little different today with the commercials based on the past because I got to figure based on the past because I have a lot of childhood friends that became great actors.
yeah,
Um, they said they were good with doing commercials when you're kids because there's really no typecasting because you're a kid. But you could still build a career as an actor when you get older because a lot of people, unless you tell them you were in that commercial, they probably won't remember you.
yeah, or
So you can kind of
recognize
fade
you.
it out. Yeah, or
Yeah,
recognize. And then
yeah,
celebrities who do commercials that do commercials is because they already made it and created their A-list genre of being a celebrity. So now they can afford to do a commercial, which most of them only do Super Bowl commercials unless it's a big paid gig because the Super Bowl, you can do one commercial and get seen more in that one time than if you were doing a residual commercial over and over again on any other channel.
yeah.
That's how many people watch it. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, that's good because you probably made some money, met some people, but those commercials are quickly forgotten. There's probably nobody even remembers Brad Pitt did
Listen,
a
man,
Super
I
Bowl
could do a
commercial.
quick commercial if I could pay off my rent and my cell phone bill. Give me a quick commercial. Listen, I'll do a quick commercial for tampons if it could pay my rent and my cell
Absolutely.
phone bill. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Are you
give
are
me,
you
yo,
man
I'm
enough
in
to
it.
do the Are you man enough to do the Preparation H
I am
commercial,
man enough. Yeah,
or how
I'll
about
preparation Ace.
Flomax?
No,
Flomax.
preparation Ace. I'll be like, so guys, listen. Yeah, I'm a man, and I can admit that when I sit down, my butt hurts. But with Preparation H, I feel so much smoother. Preparation H, the smooth gel for your ass.
And sometimes maybe helps people in a few cases, whatever the disclaimer is. It's funny.
Listen, I'm a
Barry
middle
did a
child, so it's
commercial
just,
where he wasn't the main person. I think it was his wife, or they're driving in a car
yeah.
that was towing an outhouse for the
Hmm.
Flomax commercial. Yeah, I guess that's where you got to pee a lot, but that was kind of their thing. They had people driving around with outhouses attached to the back of their cars.
Well,
Commercials can be crazy. They are fun, though. I
commercials are
have to say
nuts.
that.
You know what's
Yeah,
really cool? Like your show was being seen in Australia,
yeah,
I believe Japan, New Zealand, and major countries around the world. And I was telling people at the beginning, if you guys don't know, this show has never went off the air. Like reruns have been happening since.
yeah.
And I believe it's playing on Me TV. Is that the latest channel that it's playing on right
Yeah, I
now?
think every morning at 7:30 now. They used to do two back to back. I think it was 6:30 and 7. Now it's 7:30. It's been on there about 5 years, but we found homes various places. Well, the original was we were on ABC for 5 years. The last 7 years went to CBS.
That's
Went
right.
off the air, started the very next week, I think, on CBS daytime syndication, where they stripped the shows out for about 15 years. 1985, some guy came up with the idea of Nick at Night, which was taking the old black and white shows, which a lot of them were never seen a second time, and they
Right.
found a home there. And from midnight to 6 in the morning, they showed My Three Sons, Green Acres, Lassie, that kind of stuff. And it found a whole new audience and a whole new generation.
Oh,
Flash
I
forward
love the
10
old
more
school.
years. Yeah, the
Yeah.
formula works. So they go, well, this is working so well from 12 to 6. Why don't we just create a 24-hour station and put all these old iconic TV shows? So they created TV Land, and My Three Sons went on to that for 10 years. And then Lifetime, gosh, I don't even know.
Nickelodeon as well.
Yeah, the Odyssey channel. I mean, it's been on so many channels,
Crazy.
and yeah,
You
it's
hit it on
crazy.
the nose. You hit it on the nose, though. Like a lot of these old school shows that really started the way or paved the way for a lot of other great shows, like even The Honeymooners. That's another show that lasted a time because honestly, you didn't really need a lot in order to create a great show. What you did need was you needed a great cast, like a really great cast, in
Well,
order
that's
to
what TV's
survive a
really all
show.
about. Yeah,
You
it's
know?
true. I agree. Writing and cast.
There's even shows out there that have lasted for years, even though the cast may not be great, but their co-stars that they're brought in to help out the show get better, is the reason sometimes they get less. But your show, I you guys had such a camaraderie on set. How was your relationships offset? Was it all positive? I mean, I can understand there's a little ups and downs, but did you guys have more of a family relationship offset like you did on set?
We had a little bit with the other cast members. Obviously, I didn't hang out with Fred McMurray. Sometimes I go to an event, he'd be there, and he was always nice to me. Or William Frawley, I saw him a little bit when I was off because we did kind of have a relationship. Don Grady, he was older than me, so I think the first year he graduated from high school, and I'm,
Yeah.
just a kid, so he didn't want to hang around with the kid. Tim Considine, though, was kind of like a real older brother. He would come and pick me up on Saturdays, and we would go do things with him, and I could bring my brother along. I mean, the hardest thing I think about doing My Three Sons was when we first started. I was going to just public school, and then now I was in a situation where when you work, like even on Ozzie and Harriet, I'd have a tutor for the day that they bring in, but it
Yeah.
was always a day, 2, 3 days. My Three Sons, when it started, I wasn't going back to school, public school, for 9 months. So the teacher had to make sure she was teaching me the right things that I would have learned in the school where I was going to go. But going back to school once you're famous,
Oh, I
that's a
can
trip.
imagine.
Most of the kids who are on those shows, Dennis the Menace kind of shows, or Paul
Oh, yeah.
Peterson, they all went to Hollywood Professional School, which was school on Hollywood Boulevard that catered to the education of celebrity kids. And they would go from 9 to 12, and then you're out of school. Well, my parents had made the decision, you're going back to public school, and you're going to have to learn how to deal with these kids, because guess what? When you grow up, that's the world you're going to be in. You're not going to be a kid forever, and you're not going to be a
Right.
celebrity forever. And so we went back, and it was strange because the first couple of days, um, that's when I found out what fame kind of was. You've got everybody in the school staring at you and
Hmm.
following you and trying to become your friend or trying to beat you up. And, even some of the teachers, I didn't pick them, they'd go, "This is your teacher, Mr. Smith." And you
Right.
go to that classroom, but, within 2 minutes, they realize who I was. And then they're all falling all over themselves too. So it was really a little bit strange. I guess I went from about the fifth grade all the way through 12th grade, going back to public school. But I
Wow.
met great people. They're just real kids that wanted to be your friends. Some for 5 minutes, and some became lifelong friends. So it runs the gamut. Or I ended up in a lot of fist fights, either on the spot or after
Yeah,
school,
they're probably like, you just think
defending
you're
the
all
honor of
that
my three
now.
sons.
Probably calling you Hollywood. Get Hollywood. Beat that kid
Yeah, get
up.
Hollywood, or they get behind you and they'd be da 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 da, or they'd
Oh,
whistle
God, the
it, and they give
jealousy.
you what was called a flat tire. They'd step on the back of your tennis shoe, and I had some guy that kept doing that to me day after day. It's like, okay, the first couple
Yeah,
times, aha, it's not
that's the
funny.
only downfall of Hollywood today is when you become a superstar as a young kid, you can't go to public school anymore. You have to have in-home training because it's dangerous now. The world has
Yeah,
changed,
probably from
you
the
know?
dangerous point, but
Yeah,
it could become dangerous even to I remember my parents and their naivete about 1962. They'd say, "Oh, let's go to Disneyland." And we got there, and within an hour, Barry and I caused a mob scene, and security came up. It's like, "Who are you people?" They didn't know what was going on. And then my dad added, "Well, these guys are on the TV show, and those
hmm,
1,000 people there are waiting in line to get an autograph." They go, "Well, you can't do that here. This is Disneyland." And we're like, "We're just trying to go to Disneyland." So they go, "We're going to have to assign somebody to you and a couple guards to go with you. And next time you come here, you have to let us know in advance that you're coming because it's
correct.
disruptive."
So getting away from My Three Sons, again, an amazing, iconic show, and congratulations on that. I mean, you guys stand at a test of time like the Brady Bunch, Partridge Family, Gilligan's Island, The Honeymooners, and so on. Like, My Three Sons is definitely, I consider, on that list. They may have been a little more popular shows, but people really need to know that My Three Sons really is one of the top shows out there ever, still playing. And I really think that you guys really paved the way for a lot of these great new shows. Um, I think you had to be put on a pedestal because you made it harder for people to make great shows. Because when you had a show that lasts that long, people are like, listen, we need to step our game up because these guys are killing it.
Yeah.
And look at their cast. Um, Now, we spoke about your relationship, spoke about some of the memorable moments. Now, you do have some other stuff now. Besides acting, you do produce, direct once in a while. I'm sure you do some screenwriting now. I mean, what have you,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
your
have a
career has
production company.
taken up?
Uh,
Yeah, so your production company, which we could talk about, is basically First Team Productions, right?
yeah.
So what are some of the works that you guys have been doing? Because,
Well, we've got a
that's
couple
a whole
movies in
different
the
road.
pipeline. I've got a TV pilot, a sitcom in the pipeline. Unfortunately, last year I had another TV sitcom that we actually got. Wasn't a sitcom, sorry. It was a talk show TV pilot. But because of COVID, I just couldn't bring myself to go do it. I was like talking to my partners. I said, "Look, I think we're making a mistake doing this because what the guild's telling me is the thing you shouldn't be doing is bringing a group of people together in a single place where you're working. And what do you do when you're shooting anything? You're either on a real set, or you're in somebody's house or a building, and you're bringing 40, 50 people onto the set with the actors and the crew,
Hmm.
and we're all going to be locked in there together for 16 hours for 3 days. That's what they're telling you not to do. And
Exactly.
so I got my partners to back off for a while. I said, look, let's just wait. And we had a shoot date of, I think it was May 16th, 17th, and 18th
Hmm.
um, last year. And I said, let's wait another month, see what happens. And we did. This was, I guess, in April. So we waited till May. And I said, we're going to have to bump the start date. And we bumped it twice. So it became June, July. And that's when the numbers just went through the roof with the COVID thing.
Wow.
And so they're like, well, we want to do it. And I'm like, well, you're welcome to do it. Take my name off of every scrap of paper. I'm up, because you can't get COVID insurance. I said, what you're talking about is a liability issue here. Because if
Yep.
you can't get and I'm the signatory. I'm the guy that they're going to come after if there's an issue. And the other side of it, I'm working with friends, both crew people and actors. And I go, you guys want to do that? I mean, maybe you don't care about those people. I do. I don't want them to be working on a project of mine and get sick. And
Right.
I certainly don't want anybody to die. And I don't want that on my watch. So if you
Yeah,
guys want to
nobody does.
go ahead,
Nobody
you go
does.
ahead. So they
Yeah.
waited about another month. They went, I think, to Cleveland or something to shoot it and shot it with some other people. But, I just didn't think it was worth the risk.
No, it's not. And you know what? I think Tom Cruise literally just co-signed what you said a couple of months ago. He blew up on a set, I believe, because they weren't practicing the protocol of wearing masks and stuff like that. I mean, he went a little overboard, but he literally screamed at his set, if you're not going to do the right thing, blah, 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 you're fired right here. There are people today that are starving, trying to look for work. And he went off on his crew.
Yeah.
And he's like, and honestly, Tom Cruise has a lot of power now. He's pretty much earned it, but he may have gone off the deep end a little, but he actually made a point. Like, hey
Yeah.
guys, you're lucky you're even working. And
Yeah.
that was in the heart when COVID was
Exactly.
really hit. So he
Well,
was
this
pissed off.
wasn't,
He's like,
yeah, we weren't shooting a big movie like Mission Impossible where, millions of dollars are at stake, and you probably have a super crew on something like that. So the opportunity for sickness to prevail. But yeah, whether you're doing something large or small, and that's your job as a producer is to make those kind of calls. And I'm like, I'm making the call. If you guys don't want to follow it, then you're going to assume responsibility. I'm off of it. Do what you want, and I'll wait for the next streetcar to come along.
of
So,
course. I mean, for you, I know you're on Facebook a lot, and hopefully we'll be able to connect Facebook and Instagram. It should be now. I mean, they're owned by the same company. But if you really want to do a talk show, you can do that right now. Just get a company like StreamYard, where you could stream to YouTube and Facebook at the same time, and you could bring them in side by side.
Wow. Yeah.
Y-
Yeah. I
Yeah,
just
so
did a
look
show
into
for
that.
somebody that was on StreamYard. I hadn't done one of those. Most of the ones I've done are Zoom.
Yeah.
In fact, we even did a, I guess you would call it it was like a relative. You know how they do the autograph shows? Well, this
Hmm.
was a virtual autograph show where they had about, I think there was 10 of us there. And we could all
Yeah.
see each other and talk to each other. In fact, it was Jerry Mathers. Uh,
Wow.
Unfortunately, she just passed away and she was so friendly. I was heartbroken. Mary Wilson was the other person
Oh
on
my
there.
God, Mary
And
Wilson, really?
yeah, Tina Cole, the girl that played Katie on My Three Sons. Don Lynn, the one who was Dodie, and yeah, there was about 10, I think 8 or 10 people. But it was kind of interesting. I did it because I wanted to see what the technology of it was, or what I would see, and how we could the funny part for me is when I'm seeing this stuff now, because I'm kind of a techie. I saw this stuff 10, 15 years ago up at NAB, at the National Association of Broadcasters.
Hmm.
And we would see a situation where you could talk to a lot of people and it would go out, and so you could teach a class or a group of people, but the problem was they couldn't talk back in those days. So it
Right.
was like one-way conversation. Then it finally became where you could see other people and you could sort of talk to them, but in those days they had what was called latency. So I'd
Hmm.
say something. Well, you see it all the time. You watch the news and you see the news guy standing there for like, oh yeah. So then he starts talking because it took 5 seconds for what
Hmm.
she said in the studio to get to him out on the road. Anyway, we were there one time, and it was some guy had his camera set up, and he said, this is going right through the internet, and you can talk to my guy in New York right now. And it's just like we're talking. It was, virtually real. There was no lag, no anything, no
Yeah,
latency. So I go,
which is
wow,
great.
this guy sells this. He's going to clean up because this product, everybody's been waiting for this, to be able to go on the internet, to talk to somebody over their phone or whatever, and have a real-time conversation that not only you can see the person, but you can hear them, and there's no downtime, no lag, no latency.
Exactly. And Instagram, out of all of them, I like Instagram because it's perfect timing. There's no everything. Sometimes, like you said, with the phone, but that's why I like Instagram. And they just created Instagram rooms, so I'll eventually be able to interview 3 people at once. So when I have Soul for Real, who's going to be coming on in a couple of weeks, I'll be able to put Brian, Chris, Jace, and Andre all in different windows, and I can interview them all at the same time,
Yeah,
which is
no, I,
great.
I felt like I was on Hollywood Squares.
And you want to know, I would love to do some, and I'll be honest with you, and I just realized what you just said, 'cause now I just pictured it, just all
Yeah,
over.
everybody's sitting there. You're like the Brady Bunch. You're like looking up at,
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, people have been asking me, they love me doing shows, and have I ever considered once in a while do some special guest co-hosts? And now with Instagram, with doing a window, I'm like, you know what, that's a good idea. So, like, I know you're doing your show and everything, but if you ever wanted to bring some of your friends on, and then we could bring you back in as well, that might be kind of cool because it could show people how your talk show host skills are as well. If you
yeah,
want, I
yeah,
always offer that to people.
yeah. No,
Um,
I'm for everything, and people that are
yeah,
doing
which is
shows or
great.
new stuff. That's great. Yeah, as far
Yeah,
as
I
I'm
mean, it
concerned.
shows it's taking off. When I reshare it, a lot more people see it because it has to do with now, I think because people are starting to go back to work, even though 7 p.m. is a good time, I don't want to clash with the Jimmy Fallons and everybody else, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So when I reshare it, it's doing really well. And John
So
Amos
people
has,
can watch it then on demand when you
no,
reshare it.
no, no, no. When I reshare it, I'll reshare it right on IG. So in about 5 minutes after our interview, it'll be available. It's going to be on my wall on
Hmm.
Instagram. And
Okay.
then tomorrow I'll be putting it up on my YouTube. I'll put it up on my Facebook. And then I'm going to do a little promo to reshare it on my story so people who've missed it can go. But it'll always be available. So anybody can watch the interview as long as you have the link. You could share it on Facebook and all over the place.
No,
And I
that's
can give
cool.
you the link.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'll go ahead and put it
when I
up
put
on
it up, I'll
Facebook.
give it a link. You can put it up on Facebook and everything.
But what I'm saying is people can come back using that link and watch it at their, on
Over
demand,
and over. It's
basically
going
at
to
the
be up
store.
there forever. Hmm.
Yeah,
And it'll,
that I think that's the other good thing about all this is not everybody's available when things are live. That's the problem. So to
yeah,
have it be afterwards, if it's something where you want to chime in and ask questions, obviously it doesn't work. Yeah, you get
yeah.
your live audience can do that, but
Well, that's the thing.
yeah,
Live audience is great, but when you tape it, like even Fallon, he's very popular, but not a lot of people can stay up that late because they got to get up at 5 in the morning. So YouTube then now recycle it or you record it and everything. So that's why the show's doing really well. And plus all my great guests like yourself that are just, I don't know, you guys are just, I'm thanking you for it because you and my virtual audience is making the show really, really great, really quick.
Yeah, well, I think the fact that you have so many different types of people on your show too, not just actors, but politicians and, musicians, whatever. You can get boxers, anything who's
I got
available.
boxers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it keeps it really interesting because there's something for everybody.
Yeah, and it keeps it diverse. And when I was speaking to you offline, we're the only show really 5 days a week doing A-listers from today and A-listers from the past and bringing them together because our motto is pretty much what a show that everybody's relevant,
Yeah,
and
great way to
it's a
go.
really, really cool. Speaking of relevant, you created a new great project that you had to put on hold for a little bit called the Actor's Journey Project, correct?
Yeah, that ate up a good part of my life. I thought I was going to be working on that for a year. I think I was on it for 8 years. It ended up taking by the time we completed and I got everything into that I wanted. Yeah, basically what it is, it's a program for actors, but not on acting. The acting's everywhere. It doesn't matter where you live. You can live in probably Pea Ridge, Arkansas. They probably have an acting school. Or you go to Yale and Harvard or UCLA, USC, and mom and pop schools, Actors Studio in New York. So you go and get trained as an actor, and you come out of there. Most of the people come out, highly trained. They're good on stage. They're great in front of a camera, and they have great intentions about getting into the industry and becoming a star. And then the reality, there's this other reality that hits them. You finish school and you start to go out to get some work, and you're like, who do I call again? And what do I say? What's the first thing I do? Or should
Yeah.
I do this? So we did a program on the business side of being an actor, is basically what it is. The non-performance skills needed. And it's pretty intense. It's a 10-hour long program. And what we did is I didn't want to teach it. So I brought in 100 people from the motion picture TV industry. 45 of these people have either been nominated for Oscars, Emmys, Golden Globe Awards. So, you're getting the information from the horse's mouth, so to speak, instead of some guy that just got here yesterday, worked in a series for 2 weeks, and now he's going to tell you how to get into showbiz. So yeah, we put this program together. We even had, and it's not just actors telling actors how this all works. It's
Right.
directors, producers, executive producers, showrunners, agents, managers. It runs the gamut of everybody involved in an actor's career. We even had the president of the Screen Actors Guild was one of those people. Another one
Oh,
was the
wow.
president of the DGA, the Directors Guild of America, and about
Hmm.
10 people that sat on various boards at the Screen Actors Guild that oversee a lot of these things and problems actors encounter. So we literally, I want to say soup to nuts, but in the 10-hour long program, we go through about 65 segments. And, you learn everything to do before you get involved and as you're starting. And you learn that it's not just this one thing, it's a process.
Yeah.
And it builds upon itself. And that's kind of what this program does. Each of these segments builds out of the next one. And by the end, maybe you'll be successful. But, we even have information for people that have become successful, because there's some things that can happen to them that nobody's going to tell you about except somebody who's been there and had this happen to them and had to
Yep.
deal with it. And for some people, they find out they don't like being an actor. It's not what they thought it was. They saw the girls, the cars, the beach, and it's like, what do you mean I got to be on the set at 4 a.m. and I don't get off till 11 that night? And
Yeah.
I've always told people acting, well, if you're doing this professionally, even looking back on my 3 cents, what it really was a factory job. I went to this big building at about 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. Went in there, had about 60 minutes for lunch, so that was the only time I could make a call or play or do whatever I was doing there. You go back in. When I'd come out, it'd be dark. That was it. Like a whistle would blow. I'd come out and I'd go home. Well, I had time to eat my dinner and learn my lines for the next day, make
Yeah.
sure I was up to speed on those. And that was it. Very little playtime, especially when I was a kid or a teenager. But,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, what they see is the adjunct to that is parallel to the business, which is the parties and the cars and meeting people. But you find out that's a bunch of bunk. It does happen, and some people get involved in it, but it's also a detour. Where it can take you way off track, and you
Right.
never
And
come
that
back
happens to a
again.
lot of people. Yeah, it
It
happens to
does.
a lot of people. I mean, from what I understand, and thank you for saying all that, because a lot of people don't understand that. Like, yeah, the cars and everything, it's great, but you got to understand, in order to get all that, you got to bust your butt. Just because you're in Hollywood doesn't mean you're Hollywood 24/7. Like, there's 19 hours of work that a lot of people are
Or
putting
I
in
don't even
order to
call
get,
that work. Like when you're
yeah,
shooting,
I
that's
mean,
not
it's
work.
crazy.
You know what that is? That's the
Slavery?
reward you did for the work. The work was getting the jobs. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
always tell people. Look, I'm a guy that worked a lot, and if you throw My Three Sons, all the movies, every TV show, you could probably thread everything up on a film reel and project it. Hey, maybe it would play for about a month. So I've been doing this for what, 65 years. So you figure the other 64 years and 6 months, I was looking for work. That was the work.
that's
That's why I
crazy.
say if you get a job, that's not work. That's the part you do for free because that's what you got in it to do. Whether
That's
you're on
right.
stage, all the calls you made, all the interviews you went on, and most of them you don't get. And people, really snarky people, say things about you that it goes right to your heart. But then you got to deal with that. Or why hasn't my agent called? I haven't heard from my agent in a week or two
Yeah.
weeks. Or how about a month? Or how about I know somebody I was talking to, and she said, the funny part is I haven't heard from my agent in 3 months. I go, well, don't you think you should give him a call? So she did. You know what she found out? He
What?
died 2 months ago.
Oh, wow.
Meanwhile, she's waiting around for this agent to call. You got to be on top of it every day. That's
Of
what it is
course.
for being
Of
an
course.
actor. And
Of
if you're
course.
lucky enough to get a job, count your lucky stars. That's
Yeah.
just
And
how it
you
is.
pretty much said it in no. We're about to end. I can't believe we've already spoken for almost an hour already. That's,
Really? Oh, holy
yeah,
moly.
it's like, it's crazy. Day 10
This is
already.
something weird with these iPhones. It's compressing time. I've
Yeah,
heard there's
no, you know
iPhone
what it
time.
is? The one thing about my show that I love and hate is I love, like I said, the people I have on. You guys are great, amazing. But what I hate is everybody feels very comfortable on my show, and we get
Yes.
into these great conversations, and then before I know it, I'm seeing the red light above me, and it's like, ah, that's
Time
why we're
fast.
like, we'll have them by. But I definitely want to talk you offline,
Yeah.
because
Or
we
we'll
have
do
some
it
great
again.
conversations. But even no, I definitely want to definitely talk to you online, just have some more conversations, bringing on you again.
Absolutely.
But I do appreciate you for coming on the show with FaceTime with Todd Wharton. I really do. I mean, you're
Yeah,
definitely
thanks,
a
Todd. I
legend.
appreciate it.
Yeah, Stanley, listen, whether people recognize you or not, you are a legend. You're part of history. You're part of one of the biggest shows of all time, still being aired today. If it wasn't a great show, people wouldn't still be putting it on their channels. All right,
Yeah,
and I want people to know that.
that's the part
And
speaks for itself.
exactly. And guys, if you don't know, you've been watching FaceTime with Todd Wharton. You can find Stanley Livingston on IG at Stanley Livingston MTS, or the best way to find him, go to stanleylivingston.com. That's his entire website, which gives you everything, so much information on this website. I've been there. Anything you want to know about this guy, it's right there in a nutshell, which is great.
It's pretty
Just
neat.
gotta pretty much just go ahead and tell people what's going on. So tomorrow night we got Buddy White from the R&B group Intro who's going to be in the house tomorrow night. He's got some great songs, and then next week we got a pretty good lineup here. We got Albertus Joseph, who's pretty much the #1 street artist in New York City. He just did an interview with Ryan Reynolds, so I'm glad to have him on Monday. Michael Winslow from Police Academy is going to be here on Tuesday. Pretty excited about that. Willie Taylor from Day 26, P. Diddy's group, Rima Webb, who's a Broadway star, and then we're going to round it out with an international DJ, DJ Redbottom, one of the great female DJs of our time. So I'm excited to have all these people in, just like we have Stanley here tonight. And guys, please go to catch My Three Sons on Me TV, and Me
Emmy,
TV,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and me. And
At
Stanley, again, thank you.
7:30. Thanks
Yes.
again, Todd. I appreciate it.
And thank you to my virtual audience. Definitely check us out. I'll be posting this in about another 5 minutes. Wear your mask, Be safe, practice social distancing, and like I always say, if you're not living a passionate life, then whose life are you living? Guys, have a great night. Stanley, I'll see you soon.
Take care, man. Bye now.
Bye-bye.